All right, let's dive in. Halloween, read it. Everybody knows it, loves it, but I bet there's more to this holiday than meets the eye.
Yeah, I think you'll be surprised. Halloween's got this crazy history, blends ancient traditions with how we celebrate today.
Okay, sold. Lay it on me. What are we looking at for this deep dive?
Well, we've got a stack of books, articles, even some folklore collections.
So real deep dive material then. What's the mission here? What are we hoping to uncover?
I think the big question is how do we get from ancient harvest festivals to, well, kids in costumes demanding candy?
That a good question. And I gotta admit, I always thought Halloween was, all about pagan roots. But then I heard there's a Christian connection too. So, which is it?
Actually, it's kind of both. The name itself is a clue. Halloween, it's short for All Hallows Eve.
All Hallows Eve, okay.
And that's the night before All Saints' Day, which is a Christian feast day, November 1st, honoring all the saints, known and unknown.
And then I'm guessing All Souls Day comes next.
You got it. November 2nd, remembering all the faithful departed.
So Halloween kicks off this, 3-day remembrance period.
You could say that. It's called All Hallowtide, and it's when Christians traditionally remember and pray for the dead.
Makes sense. Okay, so we've got the Christian connection, but the date, October 31st, is there something special about that, or?
Well, it actually got moved around a bit. See, these days used to be celebrated on different dates, sometimes even in the spring.
In the spring. That's not very Halloween-y.
Right. But back in the 8th century, Pope Gregory III, he moved All Saints' Day to November 1st.
And Halloween just followed along, I guess.
Yep. There are theories why he did that, maybe to handle all the pilgrims in Rome or to avoid the summer heat. Who knows?
Roman summers, yeah.
No,
Thanks.
yeah.
But okay, if it's about honoring saints, why all the spooky stuff?
Mm-hmm.
Ghosts and goblins and, the whole Halloween vibe.
That's where those ancient traditions you mentioned come in. Specifically, we got to look at the Celts.
Celts, okay, I'm intrigued. Tell me more about that.
So, Halloween is thought to be super influenced by this old Gaelic festival, Samhain, celebrated right around October 31st, November 1st.
Samhain. I've heard that name.
It marked the end of harvest, the beginning of winter, but it was also like this liminal time when the boundary between our world and the other world was super thin.
Hold on, the other world. Are we talking fairies and spirits now?
You bet we are. In Gaelic folklore, this was when the Eos, that's like the spirits or fairies, could more easily cross over.
So not just your average end of harvest party then?
Nope. It was a time to respect them. Be careful.
Did people do anything specific to, appease these spirits?
Oh, yeah. They'd leave out food and drinks for the AOSA to ensure their good graces, kind of like protection during the winter.
I see. Keep the fairies happy, keep the winter woes away.
And it wasn't just fairies, actually. Souls of the dead were also thought to return home on Samhain. People would even set places for them at the dinner table, by the fire.
Wow, that's kind of heartwarming, actually. Welcoming the spirits right into your home.
Yeah, it's got this duality to it, right? Honoring the dead, but also a little bit of fear of the unknown.
Okay, and I can't let you go without asking about those bonfires. Those are so iconic when you think of Halloween, at least for me anyway.
The bonfires? Oh, yeah. Those were huge for Samhain. Not just for looks, though.
I figured there was more to it.
The flames, they were believed to be protective, cleansing, maybe even warding off those evil spirits.
Okay, so less about roasting marshmallows, more about, spiritual cleansing.
Yeah, plus, they were mimicking the sun, pushing back against the darkness as winter set in.
So connecting with the light and the shadows all at the same time, that's pretty powerful.
Right, and this whole blend of, honoring the dead, guarding against the unknown, that's really at the heart of where Halloween comes from.
Wow, okay, so we've got this mix of Christian and Celtic influences. But I am guessing things didn't just stay in Europe, right?
You're catching on. These traditions traveled, especially with those Irish and Scottish immigrants heading to North America in the 19th century.
Ah, so that's how it gets to America.
Yeah.
And they just brought their Halloween traditions with them.
Exactly. But it wasn't always smooth sailing. There were some interesting twists and turns as Halloween took root in American soil.
Interesting twists and turns, you say.
Yeah.
All right, you've definitely got my attention.
Well, that's a story for part 2 of our deep dive.
Okay, I can't wait.
Welcome back to our Halloween deep dive. So last we left off, those Irish and Scottish immigrants were bringing their Halloween traditions to America.
Right, and I'm curious, how did it go from those small communities to, this nationwide thing? Was it like an overnight change or?
It was definitely more of a slow burn. At first, in the early 1800s, Halloween was mainly celebrated within those immigrant enclaves. They were keeping their traditions alive.
Yeah, that makes sense.
But as those communities grew, became more like integrated with American society, well, their customs started to spread.
So it was kind of like this cultural exchange happening, these traditions slowly making their way into the broader American culture.
Exactly. And this was happening at the same time that America was getting really into folklore and the occult.
Oh, interesting. So the timing was right
Yeah.
for Halloween to like take off.
You could say that. All those spooky elements, they really resonated with people. It tapped into something kind of primal.
I get that. That fascination with the unknown, it's
Yeah.
definitely part of the human experience.
For sure. And by the early 1900s, Halloween was being celebrated coast to coast. Pretty amazing, considering it started in these small immigrant communities.
It really is. But what about trick-or-treating? We talked about its connection to souling, but when did it actually become like the Halloween thing?
Good question. Trick-or-treating, as we know it, really took off in the 1930s.
The 1930s.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay. So not that old, actually, considering how big it is now.
Right. Before that, there were mentions of guising, kids going door to door in costumes. But the phrase trick or treat, that didn't show up in print until 1927.
1927. Man, that's surprisingly recent.
It is. And it didn't really explode until the 1930s, and then even more so after World War II.
So even within Halloween, you have these new customs popping up, taking center stage.
Exactly. It's always evolving, adapting. Makes you wonder what'll be next.
For sure. But okay, gotta ask, when did Halloween get so commercialized? Like it seems like every store turns orange and black in October.
Yeah, that really picked up in the mid-20th century. Around the same time, trick-or-treating was booming. Companies saw an opportunity.
Makes sense. It's a huge market.
Oh, yeah, massive. Suddenly you had mass-produced costumes, decorations, and of course, tons of candy.
And those pre-made costumes, they probably made it a lot easier for people to participate, right?
Definitely. Not everyone has the time or, the skills to make their own costumes.
It's kind of wild to think about how something that started with people disguising themselves to like ward off spirits is now a multi-billion-dollar industry.
It really shows you how much things can change, doesn't it?
It does. And speaking of change, we talked about the Christian roots of Halloween, but are there other like religious or cultural perspectives that we should know about?
Oh, absolutely. Some Protestant Christians, for example, they celebrate Halloween as Reformation Day.
Reformation Day, what's that about?
It commemorates the Protestant Reformation, specifically the anniversary of Martin Luther nailing those 95 Theses to the church door.
Ah, right. And that falls on October 31st.
Yep. Same day as Halloween. And then you have other Christian groups who, while they acknowledge the history, they try to create different kinds of celebrations, more focused on Christian themes.
Like those trunk or treat things I've heard about.
Exactly. Providing a safe space for kids to dress up, get candy. Some churches do harvest festivals or even Hallelujah Night celebrations.
Where kids dress up as like biblical figures.
Exactly. It's really interesting to see the range of approaches, even within Christianity.
It really is. And beyond Christianity, I'm guessing other religions and cultures have their own ways of, thinking about death and remembrance around this time of year.
You got it. Dia de Muertos in Mexico is a perfect example.
Day of the Dead. Right. That's a beautiful celebration.
It is. Really vibrant, honoring deceased loved ones. It just shows how different cultures approach these themes, death, remembrance in their own way.
It's like, even though these traditions are different, they can still exist alongside each other. Even like enhance our understanding of something like Halloween.
Totally. It speaks to how interconnected we all are, even through holidays.
That's a great point. So we've talked history, traditions, different cultural perspectives.
Yeah.
But before we wrap up this deep dive, are there any other like lesser known Halloween facts or traditions that you've stumbled upon?
Oh, there are a few. Actually, some of the most interesting stuff has to do with how Halloween has spread beyond the West. But we'll save that for part 3.
We're back and ready to wrap up our Halloween deep dive. It's been a wild ride so far, from ancient Celts to trick-or-treating in the 1930s.
I know, right? So much ground covered. But we left off talking about how Halloween's gone global, and that's where things get really interesting.
Global, huh? I kind of always thought of it as a Western thing, like America and Europe.
It definitely has deep roots there, that's for sure. But in recent decades, it's taken off in some pretty unexpected places.
Really? Like where?
Well, think Japan, parts of Asia, even some places in Latin America, Halloween's spreading its wings.
Wow. Okay, so not just a Western holiday anymore.
Mm.
But why? Is it just like American pop culture influence?
It's part of it, for sure.
Hmm.
Movies, TV shows, they definitely introduce the idea to new audiences. But the thing is, the core elements of Halloween, they seem to resonate pretty much everywhere.
I guess costumes and candy are a universal language, huh?
Yeah, pretty much. Plus that whole, spooky fun vibe, it's something a lot of people can get behind.
It's like a celebration of the strange and unusual no matter where you are in the world.
You got it. And it's fascinating to see how different cultures make it their own. For example, in Japan, Halloween is less about trick-or-treating and more about these big costume parades and parties.
So less about the candy, more about the spectacle.
Exactly. It's all about dressing up, having fun, and then in some parts of Latin America, they blend Halloween with Day of the Dead traditions.
Oh, wow, that's cool. Creating this, like, fusion of different cultural expressions.
Yeah, it's amazing. Shows you how interconnected our world is becoming, even through something like a holiday.
It really does. So we've talked history, traditions, global reach. But I got to ask, for people who see Halloween as more than just fun and games, is there something deeper there?
Oh, absolutely. Halloween, it's not all just costumes and candy. It touches on some pretty big themes like mortality, the supernatural, the unknown, stuff that can be kind of unsettling.
I can see that. It's like a reminder of our own mortality, something we don't always want to think about.
Exactly. And for some religious groups, those associations with, witchcraft or paganism, they can be uncomfortable.
So it's not always a lighthearted holiday for everyone.
Right. It really depends on your own perspective. Beliefs, Halloween can be interpreted in so many different ways.
Yeah, that makes sense. Whether it's about fun, tradition, reflection, even a bit of spooky contemplation, there's something there for everyone.
I like that. Halloween as a chance to explore all these different facets of what it means to be human.
This whole deep dive, it's really been eye-opening. I thought I knew Halloween, but now I see it with a whole new appreciation.
It's been a pleasure exploring it all with you. Hopefully our listeners feel the same way.
I'm sure they do. So as we head into this Halloween season, let's all embrace the spirit of the holiday, whatever that means for each of us, honor the traditions, enjoy the treats, and maybe even take a moment to think about what it all means.
Maybe even start a new tradition of your own.
Now that's a great idea. Until next time, deep divers, stay curious.